clock ticks down to that funeral that's going to be happening at Windsor Castle. Thomas Mace-Archer-Mills is the founder of the British Monarch Society, and he joins us on the line to reflect. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Lizzy.
How do you think that the Duke is going to be remembered?
Well, there's a lot that everyone could say about the Duke, but I think first and foremost, it will be about his service, not only to the country and the British people and those of the Commonwealth, but most importantly, Her Majesty the Queen. This was a man that gave his entire life up to support his wife. And we look at the man that he is and where he came from, a very different age and time as to what we're living in now. And I think with him goes the last bit of proper British chivalry and gentlemanliness and things that young men should be able to look up to today. Others will disagree and remember him as being crass and too straightforward, and the way things are today may be a bit racist, but that's not what he was, and that's not who he was at all. We are losing a very big part of our institution today, and it's very sad to see it go.
I know, it's very emotional, actually. And I sort of hope you're wrong that we don't lose all that chivalry, because it's something that I think we want to preserve if we can.
Of course, we do want to preserve it. I mean, after all, when you look around the world, it is that British chivalry that people try to emulate, and they try to replicate, but they can never duplicate it. There's something said for British institutions and acting British. And it's not just that stiff upper lip, it's that compassion, it's that coming together to celebrate as a whole team, whether it's good or bad, Lizzy. So today, we are really coming together again as a focal point with Windsor Castle in the background and Her Majesty the Queen. But the sad part is that we're not all coming together to celebrate. We're coming together to mourn a very big portion of the Queen's life that unfortunately has now ended. But hopefully she will draw strength on those memories and remember that she took a duty to her people, and she will continue for years to come.
Yeah, I mean, she is just something else. She's so amazing. 4 days and she after his death, and she was already kind of back to work, which I think is just a testament to her work ethic, to her sense of duty and her commitment to the country. She's just amazing. But you mentioned a little bit earlier about the wonderful relationship that she had with Philip and how he really was her support, always a step behind, which I suppose is also that little chivalrous thing again, but right behind her, he was her rock.
Well, we can say a step behind her when in all actuality he was really a step ahead of her. He always assessed the situation, always looked at how the schematics were, whether it was going to be something he thought would be good or troublesome in the best interest. So he was always the one who came to her and expressed any sort of idea, whether good or bad. And that's very important because he was her liege man of life and limb. That's what he pledged to be at her coronation. So he did his job up until his last dying day of taking care of his wife and her realm. And that is commendable. No one else has a relationship like that.
Yeah, and I mean, in a way, him standing just behind her, it's like he had her back in a way, and as you say, was assessing things for her. Who do you think is going to step in to maybe play a bit of that part in her life? Because she's going to need somebody, isn't she?
Well, she's going to need, I say that she's going to need a lot of support and a lot of people, but really, this woman is used to being alone. She's used to having to prepare herself mentally to go out and do her job as the Crown, because the Queen is a naturally shy woman. It might not be that way, but she does her job impeccably. We would never see any cracks in anything she's doing. But with that said, the royal family, they are going to come together. They are going to help her. It's going to be a Team Windsor effort to make sure that the Queen is okay.
And she'll need it, I think, every step of the way, because she is so strong, like you said. And I just think today, I mean, I can't imagine that she will show her grief visibly.
Well, we might see a tear or two. I would be very surprised today if we didn't see any sort of emotion from Her Majesty. I mean, if she can shed a few tears for a ship that was decommissioned in the late 90s, I'm sure we'll see a few tears for her husband. She is not someone who is unfeeling and stone-like. Those sorts of thoughts are not right, because the Queen is a deeply caring person.
Absolutely. And he was such a character. It's leaving a big hole behind. I mean, all the stories that are coming out, he was larger than life in so many ways.
Character, absolute character, especially when he was on walkabout and he would meet people that were, of course, different to him, that have a whole different background. He really could take odd instances and uncomfortable sorts of meetings and turn it around. That was his spark. And he used humor. He used all of these little tools in his box to say, we're going to make this successful, we'll make little jokes, we'll engage the people, we'll make them laugh. So they go away with a very personal experience of meeting up. And that's what it's about. The crown touching the people, reaching out to the people. And he understood how important that was, because that institution is what his children are going to survive on. It's what his wife survived on. It's what he survived on. So his bond between the public and that fun Duke that we all know, even though some of the things he might have said, people today might not think were funny, but at that time, they were icebreakers. People weren't so sensitive as they are today, and he had that ability to take little jokes and insert them to really break the ice and make people just laugh, and that endeared him to them. We lose so much today.
I truly agree with that. And I think that what you're talking about is what's actually helped to make the royal family a little more approachable.
Of course it is. And you want to take them to your, well, we already take them to our hearts, but when we're in a position when we're looking at them, or we're practically going to meet them as the public, everyone's, oh my goodness, I'm so nervous. And they don't want that. They don't like that. They want to be seen as approachable, touchable. And they truly are, because this big shroud of mystery around the royal family is to, well, they're different than us. And no, the royal family, they have wicked senses of humor. They enjoy being with everyday people. I mean, if you think about their lives, look at how they've had to live. Not ever private, always in the spotlight. Yes, they might have some privileges, but they've sacrificed their entire life for the people of this nation and the Commonwealth. I wouldn't want to live that life at all.
No, it would. It's incredibly invasive, very high pressured as well. And once again, you could say a very intimate moment when you're saying goodbye to a loved one, because for them it's a husband, it's a father, it's your grandfather, best friend. To then be in the spotlight in front of all the TV cameras, I mean, that must be very, very challenging.
Well, and again, we're watching a sort of repeat. If we go back to 1997, we're watching a repeat of two princes walking behind a coffin. And I think people are going to have a sort of reflection and a transport back to what happened with Diana's funeral. And I do feel for the royal family, because they are not grieving in private. The cameras will be there. People have showed up to be there to see this. So even though it's a royal ceremonial, it might as well be open public state funeral, because again, they are under the microscope. Everything that they do, their mourning, everything will be watched by hundreds of millions of people. And their lives are not their own. And this brings me to exactly the equation that Prince Philip had tried to break with and say, you know, we're not supposed to do X, Y, and Z, but he was a trailblazer. So if we remember the royal family, the actual television series that was aired in the 60s, he liked that. He thought it was good to show everybody what their daily lives were. The Queen wasn't too thrilled, and we haven't seen it since it aired. But this man knew when the time had come on things. He knew the expiry date. And when we saw him retire, that was him pulling the plug on his own service. He knew what his limits were and his capabilities. And he, unfortunately, was able to retire. And I say unfortunately because he still had to leave his wife doing her job in her early 90s. So we have a man here who gave duty until he was unable to do it anymore. And I think after that accident in Sandringham, he realized, you know what, maybe I'm not just dazzled by the sun, maybe I'm now dazzled by a life that is coming to a close. And he went on his own terms at home. And we have to respect that from this man who's been the husband of our Queen for 73 years.
And you talk there about his duty. I mean, he leaves a huge legacy behind. He will certainly not be forgotten, a real treasure. I just hope that today there has been some royal family disagreements, and just hoping that maybe, for instance, William and Harry talked about them walking behind the funeral procession, that this relationship doesn't cloud what is actually meant to be about a celebration of Prince Philip's life.
Well, I would hope not, but the way we see now from what Buckingham Palace has released, where the members of the royal family are walking, even though Princes Harry and William will be behind the Duke's coffin, they will be interrupted by their cousin, Peter Phillips, who was the first grandson of course, the Queen and the Duke. He will be in between the Wales's brothers. So there will be no opportunity to really speak or look at each other. And then when the royal family procession enters St. George's Chapel, Prince William will break off and go ahead of his brother and his cousin Peter Phillips and join the line of the elder brothers and heirs. So there will be no opportunity there either for the two princes to be photographed directly. However, after the funeral, it is possible back up in the state apartments that the two brothers might speak, they might not. There's a lot of water that's gone under this bridge and over that dam. So we'll see what happens. I just hope that something like this will put an end to this rivalry and allow the family to heal and come back together.
And key moments like this, sometimes that's exactly what it does, because it brings perspective on life, on your own life, on the circumstances around you, and perhaps it will be the thing that triggers some forgiveness and a reconciliation, perhaps.
But I do hope so. And of course, what you say, we all hope, we all want. And if we put ourselves in that position and we say life is fragile, life is not guaranteed, and we don't know whether we'll have it tomorrow. But when we look at this family that is so bent on duty and service to the people, I don't know if what the Sussexes had done will be able to be reconciled, because they're not about duty and selfless service. And I think that's where the Duke of Cambridge is saying, wait a minute, there's a very big difference between my position and yours. And I don't think you understand. So hopefully Prince William will be very mature about it and be the elder brother and say, let's work on repairing what we've lost.
I do hope so. I do hope so. On a personal note, did you ever get to meet the Duke of Edinburgh?
I have met the Duke. I've met him several times. And my grandfather in Canterbury was a grenadier. So, of course, with Prince Philip in his position with the Grenadiers, I had several stories of what it was like to be at Grenadier Guard Day and the Grenadier Garden parties. And my grandfather also had several interactions with him and my grandmother, because we all know he was one for a good pint. So he had come over to my grandfather and my grandmother when they were there. And the Duke looked at my grandfather and said, oh, great, you've got me a pint. Now go off and get one of your own. So he took my grandfather and had a pint with my gran. So, but my own personal experience was wonderful with him, especially at Garter Day, and that was always a highlight in the royal calendar. But he wasn't so much one for pop and pantry, and you knew that him being in that spotlight was quite something for him, not something he really enjoyed. And sometimes in the little circles up in Engine Court, he would always make a little look or a gesture that let us know just how uncomfortable he really was. But he was a trooper, always a trooper.
And so for you today, do you feel a little emotional at this funeral happening later on today?
I do not feel so much emotional as I do loss, and my sorrow is for the nation in whole, and my thoughts are with Her Majesty the Queen. But where we are as a country, as a nation, this is a man who is not just a husband of our sovereign, he was the grandfather of our nation. And for so many of us who are younger, in our 30s and 40s, he's always been there as long as the Queen has. So I think we take for granted life and time, and we just expect these people who are institutions in their own right to always be there.